for things. Real quick, homework was due Sunday, and all the stuff was due Sunday, and I'll get to grading it. It's all due at midnight, and if I don't have meetings on Monday, I grade it Monday. If not, I try to grade it Tuesday and I was meetings all day today. But I'm pretty good at getting people's scores back within 24, 48 hours. One correction I'll make though, you all have probably already seen your homework results. Question 9 was incorrectly marked. I do an item analysis every single week. So that means after I give you the homework, I take everybody's answers. I do these things called discrimination indexes and a bunch of other stuff. And it basically tells me, hey, this question's bad. I go look at that question, and I usually make a few determinations. Sometimes it's bad because the question's just hard, and it's just hard, and it's just going to be hard to score. Like, I just expect that only 40% of students will get it right, or 50% because it's hard. It's very rare that that's the case. Very rare. Other times I see a question and the question's well written. However, I must have not taught it well. It's like, you guys should have got this right, but 70% missed it, so that's egg on my face. And then other times the question's marked wrong or it's a bad question. In the instances that it's my fault, the question's marked wrong, or I don't think I taught it well, I just give you all the points back. And this week, question 9 is one of those questions. It was marked incorrectly. Everybody gets 3 points. Yay. There you go. Boom. Well, you get 3 points if you missed it. If you got lucky and you clicked the wrong answer and got it right, that's cool. But I encourage you to go back and look at question 9. I'm not going to take your points away. You just, got lucky. But 3 points back to everybody. Simple and easy. So there's that. At the end of class, we'll talk about teams. I do mostly have your teams. I know I'm a week behind, but it's because, and I'm not going to say who they are, I had a few students that are in my Thursday section and in my Monday section that wanted to work together. And I thought I might be able to do that logistically, but I can't. So they're just going to have to be in their own team, separate from each other. That just is what it is. But I do have your teams for the most part, so I will try to get those posted probably tomorrow. The reason they weren't posted today is because they're on my computer at my home office. But I think I got it all sorted out. So you'll have your teams. The first thing you have to turn in is the action plan, which is not due for 3 weeks. So you have time, and the action plan will take you, for instance, you said you had an idea. If your team's on board with that idea, you guys will be done with the action plan in 10 minutes. It's nothing. As soon as you come up with your idea, the action plan is like, boom, finished. I'm also not super hard and fast on the action plan because it is so much more important to me that it's done well because it sets up everything. So if you turn it in early, or if you come to me and say, hey, we have 3 or 4 ideas and we're trying to get it together, I'll work with you. The action plan is one that I'm more loosey-goosey on due dates with because I just need it done right so that you all can do well in the pop project. Cool? Cool. We're going to share the screen here. Ooh. Gotta share the screen first. Boom. No matter how many times I do this, there's always so many buttons to press, and it's so easy to miss something. I think I got it all. I have chat up on my other screen. You're always welcome to ask any questions if you'd like over there. This week we are talking about managing stress, but first we have to start in the news. I'm going to go through this briefly, and then I'm going to talk about our results from last week, and then we're going to do stress. So, I told my class this last Thursday. Right now, it's kind of hard to get good business news related to our class specifically, because anytime there's a major event in the news, obviously there was the politically motivated assassination last week, that floods Forbes, Business Insider, Wall Street Journal. Every single article is related to that in some way, and business news often goes to the wayside. There's actually some strategy, which if you want some messed up strategy here, there's some strategy to making large moves as an organization if something happens in the country that doesn't affect the stock market, but affects the news cycle, because when you make that change, it doesn't make the news cycle. Isn't that cool? So there's a little strategy for you that you hopefully never have to use, but like big layoffs. If you had to lay off a bunch of people in your Starbucks or something, it's always Starbucks, always Kendall Strays, for burning their coffee, then it doesn't make the news as much, right? But if it's a slow news week, it's getting in there. So the news I have is pulled mostly from anything that's come out in the last 6 months, particularly regarding stress. A recent report by Johns Hopkins showed that 68% of Gen Z workers say that they are oh my gosh, this wants me to reboot. You can go to hell. You can reboot in 2 hours. They did this to my office computer and it said 2 hours. And at the end of the 2 hours, it forced me to reboot. So we're on a timer, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, that's terrible. These should all be updated pre-get, right? So this doesn't happen. Anyway, because I'll lose all the Zoom audience. So 68% of Gen Z workers say that they are stressed most of the time at work. Many are entering the workforce during times of economic unpredictability, political instability, global issues, and post-pandemic ripple effects. Specifically, the pandemic was the biggest spike we've probably seen in stress ever. There's people out there that have predicted, because we didn't measure this stuff back during World War II, that have predicted that the pandemic was actually increased more stress in the work environment than even world wars like we entered, right? World War II. The pandemic, for some reason, was just a massive stress increase, not only when the pandemic started, but during the pandemic and then returning from the pandemic. So this number is really not that shocking, honestly. Stress among top executives is also high. C-suite stress index, so your top people of your companies, show that 82% of C-suite leaders say their stress is up compared to last year. Worried about supply chain disruptions, different types of regulatory pressures that are going on. My wife works for a company that does contracts, government contracts. Obviously, with Doge starting up, there was like a huge freak out for the first 3 to 6 months that Doge was going to affect their government contracts. And I don't know how much I can tell you these numbers. It's insider stuff. But in the end, you can know they lost like 0.01% of their actual contract. So it ended up being nothing. But it doesn't mean there was a ton of stress for 6 months around it. And to combat all this, and we'll continue to talk about this, employers are expanding well-being, mental health offering despite economic uncertainty, because we are finding that doing this for our employees is actually, even though it may cost a lot of money, it ends up seemingly helping organizations in the long run save money, particularly through not losing employees to turnover.
Are you saying treating your employees good will prevent them from leaving?
Keeps them staying. Now, as a organizational behavior scientist, when I write papers like such as this, like let's say I published a paper on this and I said 93% of employers plan to either maintain or increase their well-being offerings. The way I have to present that in my research is basically say, hey, there's this problem, employees are stressed, and employees that are really stressed or sad and are leaving the organization, you guys should do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to cost a lot of money. But at the very end, we do a practical application section that always says it may cost a lot of money, but when your employees are happy, I'm going to save you money in the long run. And then they say, great. And you have to make sure you have something like that in there to basically say, it's good for your employees, which is good for your company to make money. That's just the way it is. Now, we're going to talk briefly about our class results from last week. You all took 3 assessments. I still need to go through them all individually and give you grades on them, but I did pull them all, and all I did was throw out, if you calculated it wrong, your results look super weird, so I just threw out outliers. So I haven't graded you yet, but if you had an outlier result, it's probably going to end up affecting your grade, only if it's a drastic outlier result, which means you calculated it wrong. And I can tell if you calculated it wrong. It's not like, oh, because you scored oddly high, you lose points. It's that you scored an impossible number, if that makes sense. Like you got 400 on knowing. You can't have that, which does happen. People miscalculate their stuff all the time. And
what if they just are all knowing?
We can't do it. You really, literally can't score that high because there's caps on these things. So for our class, knowing was a 3.88. Planning was a 4.04, creating was a 3.47. Planning was the most common dominant cognitive style of individuals in our class. Knowing was the second, and creating was number 3. This is not a shock at all because you are all business students, so I would fully expect that creating would be the lowest out of the 3. Planning is typically the highest among college students. And if we look at the results from the book, which the book does this cool little thing where they take comparison data. So they surveyed 11,000 students. Now, something they don't do is they don't specify if these are business students or students across the board, because you all are low in creating, which is expected given your chosen field. If we were liberal arts, I would expect that to be higher. However, the results, the mean for creating style is actually 3.92, which is quite a bit above, almost half a point above us, which makes me think these 11,000 students are probably taken across all of college. So we fell, we're really low in creative style, but besides that, we're actually fairly even. I would expect our class, because this is an average, I would expect us to fall in the second quartile, which is basically what we do. However, you should look at your individual results and you can see where you fall on all of these things. It doesn't, for this one, it doesn't really say a lot. It's just whatever your dominant style is. What we really care about in this is like which style is your main one, not how high you are in it versus the others. Then tolerance of ambiguity. It breaks out into 3 different constructs, but primarily we're actually concerned about the collective of those constructs. The collective for this class, I don't think I put it up there. Your mean as a class for total tolerance of ambiguity was around 58. So it's a little bit higher than the mean here. So you're right in line with what we'd expect. College students tend to be more tolerant of ambiguity because you all are coming here to explore knowledge and change your lives and however, so you're more okay with a little bit of change. So there's that. So you can look at your results. All these tables are in the book, so you can see your results and look at these tables if you want to know where you fall. So we're in about the third quartile of tolerance of ambiguity. And then last one, core self-evaluation. Self-esteem, self-efficacy, emotional stability, and locus of control. And here are those results. I hate that the book doesn't do a breakdown of each. That's wrong, because they have that data if they did this. But a survey of 5,000 students, averaged out at a mean of about 3.73. Our class falls right in the second quartile, which again is about exactly what I would expect. So our core self-evaluation is right in the middle. I do want to point out, though, these are college students that they surveyed. So these are actually inflated numbers. So you all falling right in the middle of this does not mean that you're not, on average, higher than the general population. The general population is going to have a lower core self-evaluation. You all scored a little bit. You guys scored right in the middle of college students, which is what we expect because data is pretty cool and that it usually works out exactly like you think it will. And that's why I like it. It's predictable, low tolerance of ambiguity. The math using maths. Anybody here ever used R? You ever use R, statistical software? I hate it. My SPSS software expired this weekend, and I decided I was going to renew it today. But I had some stuff I wanted to do over the weekend. And I vaguely know how to use R. And I wrote code for 5 hours for data, and it didn't work. So I'm going to do it in SPSS, like update everything. You ever use A+? It's a nicer R.
I took a business statistics class that I had to use R for, and my mom does coding, so I kind of understand a little bit.
Use RStudio. Use Python and stuff.
I'm learning Python.
Use Python. I can only code for data. I can't code for anything fun. And I'm not good at it, apparently. 5 hours ago. All right. So this week we're talking about stress, job stress particularly. We'll talk about the most common types of stress within organizations, the problems with it, and then ways that managers, which is kind of what your college are training to be, can fight against it, and then ways that institutions can fight against it. Then after we talk about that, we take a little break, we'll come back, we'll talk about a case study from my very first paper that I ever did, and then we'll talk about a case study that I'm going to have you guys look at very briefly, and that's going to be a lecture question, and then we're going to get out of here. I don't know how long this is going to be, but it's not going to be super long. It's also getting colder in here. I'm chilly. My office is super hot. Now I'm just what a day. So job stress by the numbers. I took this data in I think the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. So just know that a year or two can be a lot in terms of this stuff. So this stuff could have varied a little bit. I try to update all my numbers every 1 to 2 years. Average numbers of days missed per year for stress-related illnesses is 25 days per year for the average employee. That's over half of all work absences. 25 is a lot. Imagine that. You have employees that are missing nearly a month of work for stress-related illnesses on average. Now, keep in mind, this is across all industries, including entry-level jobs, So, people that are 17, 18 years old working their very first job at McDonald's, a lot of missed days come from things like that. And so that kind of inflates the number just a little bit. But an average number of 25 days, 50% of workers report stress to be a major inhibitor in their job. And the US economy loses $500 or $500 billion annually. This number is vague and has been mentioned multiple times in research, at least via media that likes to highlight research. We don't have a clear answer for how much money is lost in the United States. So you're going to see this number. If you Google this number is probably what's going to come up. It all depends on how you calculate it, and also what we consider, to be considered like a stress cost. So if an employee quits your organization, it could be stress related, it could be not, but technically that affects the economy. If your company sees a downturn in profits because your employees are less productive, because it could be stress related, it could not be. Every time an employee misses a day at work, you're technically losing their production. That technically affects your company, which affects the economy. So that counts to that $500 billion number. So we don't know for sure. We just know that it's a lot of money. 61% of those that experience stress also experience anxiety, and 37% of Americans report stress that is debilitating. Now, importantly here, a lot of my friends are psychologists, as Jet, you mentioned last week. A lot of this lecture sounds very psychology-y. I have lots of psychology friends, and my friend, future Dr. Gray, is working on his PhD at Oklahoma State right now, is currently... Good morning. Good morning. That surely was for a dog or a baby or a kid or something.
Yeah.
That was great. That's going to be on the recording and everything.
I am so sorry. My kid just woke up. I am so sorry.
How old is your kid?
They are about to turn 5 coming up.
5. That's a great age to say good morning like that. Oh man,
sorry, Professor.
Oh, I love it. I got kids. My kid on Thursday ran into the office while I was giving a lecture. It's no big deal. I could literally care less. Anyway. So, future Dr. Gray, who's a clinical psychologist, tells me, working with his patients, that he can diagnose among at least American people between the age of 20 and 25, that's all of his patients. He said he can probably diagnose with 100% of them with depression and anxiety. His belief is a lot of that's due with how we diagnose depression and anxiety. You can be state-based, so like you feel that way in the moment. So it's very, very easy to diagnose them with depression and anxiety. However, he said he's seen definitely an uptick in it. Also, keep in mind, anybody coming to see him is depressed or experiencing something anyway. However, what he sees more often than not lately is debilitating stress. Now, debilitating stress is different, and we're going to talk about the positives of stress here in a second. Having stress that causes anxiety is one thing, but you can have stress that's causing anxiety or even depression and still be operating. Debilitating is when you cross over to that threshold where you can't function. You can't do things anymore. You're either completely frozen or you're operating at a really low level. So 37%, a third of Americans, more than a third, are reporting stress that is debilitating to their lives. That's a lot. Stress outcomes, obviously absenteeism, that's that 25 number of people that are not showing up to work. Turnover, people leaving your organization, which costs you lots of money. Job dissatisfaction, accidents. As you increase stress, as it gets too high, you actually lose focus. So as you lose focus, people tend to make more mistakes. Physical health, increased stress has all sorts of effects on the body. And then counterproductive work behaviors, which we'll talk about with my case study here in a bit. So people doing negative things against your organization. That can be with other employees, such as gossiping, or towards the organization. What's really, really cool about human psyche is if employees feel stressed or they feel their boss has harmed them in some way, they're actually less likely to take it out on the boss directly or on their coworkers directly. They engage in what's called displaced aggression. That's actually what my dissertation's on, so I feel qualified to talk about this. And that is, they'll direct their negative behaviors at the organization. They treat it like it's some sort of organism. So it's like if your boss is mean to you, instead of being mean to your boss, you're more likely to just steal from the organization or slack off. right? Or do something that you think hurts the organization. Because in a way, it's like inadvertently harming your boss. Do you know why they do that?
Because it's financially beneficial to steal stuff.
It is financially beneficial to steal stuff, but also there's less retaliation.
Sure.
If you're mean to me as my boss and I'm mean to you, retaliation. But if you're mean to me and I steal from the company, I feel like I'm hurting you.
Especially if you get away with it.
Especially if you get away with it. Yeah, which a lot do.
It's not hard. Corporations are
Not very hard, yeah. Well, let's focus on the positives for a minute. We have something called eustress. Distress is what we've been talking about. When we talk about stress, we typically are referring to distress. I'm sorry that's so small for those in the audience that are here. Everybody else online, probably good to go. Distress, negative, overwhelming, harmful to health and performance. Eustress is positive. It tends to cause motivation, focus, resilience. If you have no stress at all in your job, you actually tend to work less well. It's almost like complacency. We see this with conflict as well. I'll talk about conflict in a different date. And in conflict, no conflict is bad. You're not communicating with your team. They say the same thing for marriage. You made a joke about last week. It's like all this stuff can be applied to marriage. No conflict in your marriage is actually bad. Too much conflict is bad. A little bit is good. It's the same for stress. A little bit of stress is good. The people who really brought this together are Robert, do my best. It's Yerkes. That's right. Yerkes and John Dodson. And they created their Yerkes and Dodson law, which describes the relationship between arousal, which is stress, and performance. And it looks like this. Basically, at no stress at all, we have boredom. Somebody I got my PhD with did a whole paper on boredom, and in her paper, and it did really, really well. I went to this awesome journal. In her paper, she basically showed that bored employees are almost as bad as extremely stressed out employees that are ready to leave your organization. Bored employees are on Facebook. They actually make more errors. They're not engaged. They're not socializing with people in your company. They end up just kind of being like a lump in your company and can even start engaging in negative behaviors against your company because they're so bored. It's very similar to your very, very stressed employees that start harming your organization as well. So really what we want is this optimal middle ground, optimal performance right here in the center. What's funny is my best example of this is not even from my work environment, but when I was running all the time, I used to get when I was competing and all sorts of stuff, I used to get super, super stressed, and I always saw it as a negative thing. I would throw up before races, stuff like that. And then as I got better and better and better at it, and I was doing well, I remember running when I was 24, 25, and I was at this race that I wasn't stressed out or nervous about at all. And I just had this terrible time. I just performed super, super bad. And it was the most relaxed I'd been. And then my coach at the time was telling me, he was like, yeah, because you were calm and so confident. He's like, you didn't take it seriously. You were just out of it, right? This was nothing. This should have been easy. And I wasn't focused. And then it actually helped me a lot. I felt better. I actually I have to do lots of different public speaking things, especially at conferences. I don't have any fear of public speaking, but I start feeling nervous if I'm not nervous about the speech. If I'm not a little bit stressed about going out in front of a bunch of people and talking, that's not good for me. And that's what you see at work as well. Now, if it's too much, obviously, if I have too much fear to go talk in front of a group of people, I'm going to get stage fright, I'm going to lock up, and I'm going to, And if I'm too low, then it's going to be lackadaisical, and I'm going to forget my talking points or not take it seriously. So a little bit of stress is good. It's okay. I don't want us to swing so far in a direction where we're our employees all have to feel completely 100% comfortable all the time and nothing should be difficult. Yes.
It's like pressure.
Yeah.
You have to put enough pressure on them that they feel compressed and they got to do their job on it. It's crushing their bones.
It's just like having kids, honestly. But yeah, your employees, we used to be very much your employees are going to do a job no matter what. Sometimes we swing too far the other direction, which is everybody needs to feel 100% great in their job all the time. But we always have to remember employees are in a job because you have a skill set and you can provide something. And it's okay for your job to be challenging, because if it wasn't challenging, then everybody could do it. right? And you're paid because you can do something that's harder than others can, basically. So low stress, repetitive task, no challenge, you start getting disengagement. Optimal stress, stretch projects, so projects that require you to maximize your ability to complete them, things with clear deadlines. People become motivated, they're more likely to learn, they become very productive. That's kind of where the statement comes that if you want something done, give it to a busy person operating at an optimal stress level. And then high stress, an impossible workload with no support, shut down. My wife will tell you, if we have too many house things to do or too much stuff to do, her first reaction when you have a lot of stuff to do is to do nothing at all, right? And everybody's experienced that. When you have a lot to do, you pull your phone out, you start death scrolling, right? Or doom scrolling, that's what you call it. They start doom scrolling instead of completing things. That's what happens in high stress. If it seems impossible, we'll shut down. Easier said than done. Now, this comes from your book. This was actually originally not applied to stress. It was applied to something else. And then somebody else took it and was like, we can make this Lewin's force field about stress. I think force field's cool. Everything that's successful has a cool name and a good model. Lewin's force field basically says, we have stressors at our job. This could be lots of things, like to be at work on time, deadlines, dealing with difficult coworkers, complexity of a task, like me trying to work in that R program over the weekend, whatever. These are stressors. Then we have coping mechanisms. These coping mechanisms are typically internal, so it's like our ability to time manage, any sort of like emotional stability we have, any sort of positives we have in our job or at life, whatever. These are our restraining forces. And what Lewin's model says is very, very much what we see with this. But your book, for some reason, doesn't talk about this, and I don't know why. They went with Lewin's force field. I will tell you that this is used more, but they're kind of saying the same thing. So I got to show you both. But what this is saying is if we have too many driving forces, too many stressors, I have too much stress in my work, it's going to push the field this way, and it's going to push me out of a good layer level of functioning. It's going to push me to the right side of Dodson's law. Coping mechanisms are pushing against that. And what we're hoping is that our stressors and our coping mechanisms are balancing us out so that we're operating in the middle, which is at optimal efficiency. We have lots of stressors that are coming in. We have plenty of coping mechanisms to deal with them, so we're operating well. As manager, the constant balancing act you have to do, because what makes managing so difficult is as an employee, you're doing technical tasks often. As a manager, you have to do technical tasks plus the psychological leading side of things. So I'm assigning projects to my employees while also trying to monitor them as people, right? I need my employees to be working hard and under a workload, but also functioning and not overly stressed, but also not sitting around. And it's that constant balance back and forth. So we're going to talk about coping with stress. We have what is called a hierarchy of approaches. And what's funny is we don't do this as people. So to deal with stressors, particularly bad stressors, the way we cope with them, or the way we should, is to be inactive first, which means eliminating the stressors before they can happen. Proactive, developing some sort of resiliency strategy. And then, lastly, reactive, learning a temporary coping strategy. So if I'm worried about getting to work on time in the morning, let's say commute sucks, it's busy in the mornings, I have to have my coffee, kids have to go to school. That's the stress I have every morning. That's my stress. An inactive strategy is I need to eliminate the stressor. So I'm going to set my alarm 30 minutes earlier than I think I should. I'm going to preset my coffee pot in the morning so that when I wake up, it's already brewing my coffee. I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to pre-pack my kids' lunches with everything except the sandwich that I'm going to put together in the morning, like whatever it needs to be. I'm going to pre-pack it so it's there. Boom. I'm going to tell my kids to lay out their clothes the morning before. I'm going to make sure I have gas in my car when I get home, all these things. Those are all inactive strategies. I am hoping that when I wake up in the morning, I have eliminated the stress of getting to work. It's not going to be as bad, the commute, the time, all that stuff. I've gotten rid of these stressors. Good. A proactive strategy is I wake up in the morning, I wake up a little bit late, or I didn't get my kids lunch or whatever. And now how am I going to deal with this? And the way I'm going to deal with this is I'm going to hand my kids cash out the door and say, we don't have time to make your lunch today. So I'm going to basically, in this moment, I'm going to develop this strategy of, I'm going to give you cash. We're going to deal with it right now. Good. And I've developed this strategy of, I'm just going to have to buy your lunch today. We're going to pick up coffee on the way there, whatever it is. And I know, because I've done this before, that this is my go-to. If we are late, you are eating at the school. I'm going to get my coffee on the way, whatever, right? That's my proactive strategy. Now, a reactive strategy is the temporary coping strategies, which typically aren't good, which is I'm going to, we're in a hurry, we have no time, I've got no cash in my wallet, whatever, and I'm going to yell at my kids. Like, I'm going to be mad, get up, get out the door, whatever, start yelling. I'm going to speed to work, because in the moment, I need speed, I got to rush, I got to get there. This is a reactive strategy. The problem is, what we should do is eliminate the stressors before they happen, have a plan in place in case the stress comes up anyway, money to my kids. And then a reactive strategy is if all of this fails, I can't eliminate it. I ended up not having cash. Starbucks is closed. They burn their coffee beans anyway, whatever it is. So now I have to go to some temporary in the moment strategy to get through this moment. What we do is most people tend to be reactive first. They tend to not predict a stressor. And because they didn't predict the stressor, they didn't eliminate it. And then when it comes up, they don't know what to do. So they engage in reactive strategies first in the moment. Now, the reason that becomes a huge issue is because what happens is in the work environment is when we have a reactive strategy to something that comes up, it's not like employees then immediately develop some sort of eliminating stressor. What they tend to do is the reactive strategy becomes the status quo of what I should do in the future, and that becomes the proactive strategy. So now this is my plan. And the plan, when you react first, is always worse than if you eliminate first. So if I predict the stressor and I take steps to eliminate it, and then I get a contingency plan in case it comes about, that's better than reacting to the stress when it happens and I freak out, and then whatever I did in the moment is now the strategy. Think about COVID. When COVID happened, right? Nobody was ready for that. Really no good plan in place. Very reactive. And the first few months of how we reacted as a world to COVID kind of became the consistent strategy the rest of the way, right? It's like, this is what we're going to do. If something like COVID happens again, every single person in the world's mind is going to go to how we did it the first time. Is this what we have to do? Do I have to stay home now? Do we all go virtual? We have all these things in place already to deal with this, so I'm going to send all my employees home, and we're going to deal with it like that. If, as a world, we had been very, very prepped for COVID beforehand, we knew what to do when this happened, I could guarantee you, with nobody that I have no experience in this field at all, it would have looked very different. Like, whatever they told us to do would have been different than what we did, right? There would have been a plan in place ahead of time.
Better quarantine zones, covenant spread.
There would have been a whole bunch of stuff, yeah. But like right now, the reaction to another pandemic would be to go back to whatever we did
Go
before.
to Zoom, boys.
Yeah, move over to Zoom, yeah. So that's the hierarchy of approaches. We tend to flip it, and that's the problem. It's a human reaction. We're very, very good at dealing with things that are in our face, but humans, for some reason, are not good at predicting things in the future. And because of that, we tend to react to things as they happen and then figure it out as we go, basically. So the number one stressor that we deal with is an organization, and you'll deal with your employees, is the time stressor, which is why I give the example of being late, because that's the one. Too much to do and too little time to do it. It's the most common stress faced by managers. Time stress equals job dissatisfaction. In the United States, we are considered a culture very high in time stress, which I talk about this a little bit. It's kind of funny. When I used to do the project for this class based on an app, probably the number one app I would get is some sort of management app that would manage your time or your plan or whatever. One of the best ones I got is I had a group of students that wanted to create an app that you could put all of your class syllabuses in. And so for each of your classes, and then it would basically generate your semester calendar for you, right? Of like, all these assignments are due this day, this day, this day, this day. Here's your class schedule. Like, boom, upload it to your phone, done.
That exists now.
What's up?
That exists now.
I'm sure it does.
With Gemini, you can directly integrate with Google Calendar, and then it just
Did I just give it my syllabi?
Mhm.
Good.
and it'll add like per class and everything. You just copy and paste it, and it literally does everything for you.
There you go. Well, they came up with this a little over 2 years ago, and I thought it was a good idea. So there you go. But despite all of that, people report more and more time stress than ever. So the best reasoning we have for that is that as we develop systems to give us more time, humans fill that time, basically. So if I give you more time, you'll fill that time, which is, it's kind of funny. Like, I've got a friend who works as a nurse, and he used to work days Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, and he hated the commute, and he started hating it, and so he switched to being a night nurse. So he works 3 days a week now, 12-hour shifts overnight. And the first thing he did after about 2 or 3 months of having more time to spend with his kids was become an insurance adjuster on the side to fill the extra days that he's not working. So look at us. And he's making more money as a night nurse. Like, so. The next is an encounter stressor. These are negative personal interactions. So time stress, everybody gets. Everybody understands time stress. Encounter stressors, negative personal interactions. So you're going into work, you have a bad fight with your boss, you have to work next to somebody you hate, whatever it may be. You have to deal with customers all day that suck, which we're all customers. We all suck. So I always feel so bad when I talk to people, and because as friendly as I think I am, when it comes to customer service, I think I'm not. I'm like, I paid for this, I want this done. And I can only imagine that causes stress. Yep. Encounter stressors, decreased productivity, obviously decreased job satisfaction. People are scared to come to work. They're worried about the people they have to work with or the interactions they're going to have to deal with. In the United States, we are very relationship driven in our work. Thus, we have high encounter stress. This is actually unique to the United States in a lot of ways. In the United States, we like to have this fun saying that it's not personal, it's business, right? However, in the United States, more so than maybe anywhere in the world, your ability to like jobs and positions and, your position within a company is a lot dealt with your relationship with the people in the company. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, we know that getting a job, if you have a connection within the company, it's drastically increased, right? If you already know somebody there. So we're very, very relationship driven in the United States within work context. And because of that, encounter stresses are much higher. So I'm going up for tenure, right, in a couple of years. And I have my 10-year review soon. And I work with lots of colleagues, and some of my colleagues are on my tenure committee. If you're a tenured professor, you're on a tenure committee to decide if somebody else gets tenure. So if we have a disagreement about a sports team, that causes stress in me because in the United States, I know that no matter what, it's difficult to separate the two, and that may affect my position in the future. So encounter stressors are high in the United States because of that. Situational stressors, these arise from the working conditions themselves. These really manifest in 2 ways. The first way is truly physical stress environment. So you're working in hard construction conditions. You're putting stuff, you're laying tiles on someone's roof in 1,000 degrees, right? That is like, or shingles, pardon me. That is like truly stressful. And that is a situational stressor. There's also situational stressors that come typically from things such as rapidly changing environments. Humans do not like change very much. We're actually super good at adapting, it appears, but we do not like the shift. So this is why when you see, what do they call it? Talk about Cisco. When a company buys acquisitions. When you see acquisitions and you work for a company like Meta or Cisco that have lots of acquisitions, that constant change can cause a problem. It can cause lots of stress. If your company's being acquired or you're acquiring somebody else and new employees are coming in and things are shifting, that in itself causes stress. There's like entire teams of people that they will bring as consultants when you're making major shifts in your company to help them manage the stress of employees and make sure that this shift happens comfortably, right? The best advice I can give for your rapid changing environments is to make them not rapid and to try to do them slowly. This isn't insider information. This is all over the news. If you look up my wife's company, Granicus, they've been talking about having a sale for the company for a while, and nobody within Granicus says that publicly, but I am very confident this news has been leaked for a long time to prep everybody that this is coming, right? Because it's going to be a stress when it happens and everything gets sold and bought or whatever.
So this is publicly traded?
No, not publicly traded.
Oh, so I can't buy the stock.
No, my wife has stock, but it was given to her because she's a manager, but it's all within the company. No. That's all information. That's like on all sorts of news. If you look them up, there's only like 3 big investing firms actually big enough to buy Granicus, and it's owned by one of them. So like, it's just going to be some sort of passing. But yeah. And then lastly, we have anticipatory stressors. This is anticipation of fear of an event. Typically, the most common is fear of failure and fear of embarrassment, a la public speaking. The reason people get stressed about public speaking is the fear that they're going to get up there, they're going to perform poorly, or they're going to be embarrassed, or both, right? I, for a long time growing up, oh man, I'm not going to say his name. That'd be so wrong, but I did talk to him recently. For a long time growing up, when people would get nervous going up there to give speeches in class, would be like, don't be stressed. We're all in the same boat. No one actually cares, right? Like, everybody just wants to get through this. Don't worry about it. My freshman year in college, I was taking a speech class, and I remember this guy went up there, and he gave a speech, and he completely froze. And it was one of those classes where it's like, it's a speech class, you have 10 minutes to talk, and I'm not going to do anything. Like, everybody sat down. You just have to fill these 10 minutes. That dude stopped talking and froze for 10 minutes. And I never forgot. I remembered who he was. So maybe people do pay attention. You should be nervous. I never forgot. I was just like, oh man, that is so brutal. I'm sorry.
Do you bring it up to him every once in a while?
No,
You're like, where
never
that
did. Not once. Never happened.
Wow.
So,
Such a nice guy.
Yeah, we're only friends on Facebook, I think, because of that event. Because he popped up on my Facebook, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're the dude that froze in the speech class. Add. It's brutal. Doing a lot of public speaking, I've had plenty of moments, I'm sure, but short memory. So that's all anticipatory stresses. It's the fear of an event, fear of embarrassment, fear of failure. And you see this in workplace typically approaching like big projects. You all experience it when you're taking tests. All the stress you're feeling before a test is just anticipatory stress, the fear that you're going to mess this up, right? Now, people high in neuroticism tend to have higher anticipatory stress because obviously they believe there's a higher likelihood they're going to fail. Whereas high extroversion and conscientiousness tends to lead to lower levels of that. Extroverts, man, they get like the best in a lot of these things.
You really do.
Really do? I'm super. You definitely are extroverted. It's good. It's good. I'm very introverted. And it's awesome. It's a very quiet life. Here is a great little snapshot of these things you all can use for the homework. Now, how do we eliminate these? What am I doing time-wise? I've already gone for 45 minutes, but I think I really shouldn't. Okay, we're going to pause. I've gone for 45 minutes. I'm going to pause 5 minutes. When we come back, what I'm going to do is we're going to cover all the elimination strategies, ways we can prevent this, elimination strategies at an institute level, and then we're going to talk about 2 case studies. One, I'm just going to speak on. The second, I'm going to let you guys look at and then tell me what you would do. And then we're going to go home and watch whoever's playing football tonight. I think it's Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Houston Texans and the Raiders and somebody else. It is 6:18. We'll be back like 6:24, 6:25.
Bucks and Texans already started.
Really? This is one of those pages that's put together for you all to use for the homework if you want to make it quick and easy. I gotta put my phone back on silent. There we go. Boom. We're going to talk about eliminating stressors. So we'll talk about efficient time management first. The reason I have a star by it is because this week you do the time management assessment. Yay! Americans are getting worse at time management, which is funny, but we are, for some reason. We've gotten worse. 2 out of 3 Americans desire to put more emphasis on having free time. I thought I didn't have free time until I had kids. And now I really don't have free time. But that's the case for most people, right? Like I gave that quick story about my friend that stopped being a daytime nurse and became a nighttime nurse. And the first thing he did was fill his time. And we get all this technology to help us with time management, but there's a lot of arguments to be made that it's not actually helping, right? I think I'm personally better with a planner that I write in than my phone planner, for example. It seems to work better for me. Maybe something about mindfulness and being attached to it. But one thing we can do to really help with time management is doing what we call deciding to decide. So the book talks about do what is important, not just urgent. I'm going to talk a lot about do what's important to you value-wise. So what the book is talking about is importance, reliability, and urgency. It's saying that when, as a manager, the majority of your time is spent making decisions. That's like what you're doing, making decisions, often for other people. And you have to decide when something comes about, first, how important is this, right? Does this actually matter? 2, how reliable is the information you're getting? Because if it's super important, but it's not reliable information, then it doesn't matter how important it seems. The information is not something you can be acted upon. And then urgency. Is it something we have to deal with right now? If it is important, it's reliable, and it's urgent, then you need to stop what you're doing and take care of it, right? If something is reliable information, but it's urgent, but it's not that important, that's just something you don't make a decision on. Something can be important with reliable information, but not urgent, and maybe something that requires less time can be done then, right? So those all matter. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about core values, determining what's important and what's urgent based on your core values. We talked a little bit about this last week, and we talked about self-awareness, and my cousin who's the financial planner and everything. And did I tell you all about my wife wanting to go home to see the kids, right? Or the manager wouldn't let her leave, right? Mm-hmm. Good. That is along these lines, exactly. What are your core values? You judge importance based on your personal principles and values, so things such as what do I stand for? What do I care passionately about? What legacy do I want to leave? All sorts of things. And you can determine importance based on your ability to say no to something without feeling guilty. It's one of the ways we tell people to do it. My wife tells her employees that you're all juggling way too many balls that you can actually juggle. It's impossible. And some of the balls are made of rubber, some of the balls are made of glass. And it's just important that you're going to drop balls, so make sure you drop the rubber ones. So don't drop the ones that are just super important. If that is, you have managers tend to overload people with too many jobs or too many tasks. I will tell you, all my friends that are in corporate talk about how they have way too much to do in a week than they could ever do. They like to tell me how many emails they have that are unanswered, all of this stuff. And what I have found is that the successful ones are really, really good at highlighting what am I going to be judged on? What's really important that I get done? And that has to get done because it's easy to justify not completing these other things. I'll give you an example of my own job. I'm a researcher. As a professor, I have 3 main categories of my job. I have to do research, I have to do teaching, and I have to do service. Service is things I do for the organization that are outside of the classroom and research. Reaching is obviously my research, and teaching is here. The university cares a ton that I have good student evals and my classes go well. So you all perform well, I get lots of good evals, whatever. For research, they care a lot that I get good publications. And then for the service, it can be a whole bunch of stuff. My very first year here, your hair's kind of on fire, you're trying to figure everything out. I got, my time was all taken, and you have to go to 4 recruiting events as part of our service thing. So I go to these events to help people. There was only a possibility I was gonna be able to do 3 because I was just so slammed. So I made an executive decision to do 3 recruiting events, and I got an A-star publication, which is the highest publication you can get. And I went to my dean at the end of the year during my eval, and I said, I didn't get the 4th recruiting event done, but I did get this published. And they said, great, thanks for focusing on what's important. I was like, that's right, because who cares that I stand at a booth with 3 other professors, right, for a whole day versus what benefits the university the most, right? If I published a whole bunch of papers but completely neglected you all, that would also look terrible on the university, right? So there's a balance between all these things, but knowing what to drop, what not to drop. And same with my kids. I took a job that would allow me to focus on, putting my kids to bed, except on Mondays, and spending time with my kids, coaching my son, soccer, all that kind of stuff. So my time management, that's one of my big core tenets, spending time with my wife, spending time with my family, whatever. And I say that, and immediate people's reaction is like, yeah, that should be everybody's. And I want you to know it's not everybody's, and that's okay. My friend, Dr. Gray at Bowling Green, there's 2 Grays, and that's confusing. Dr. Gray at Bowling Green, no kids, just a girlfriend. I will tell you, what's most important to him is that he gets to travel every year. Instead of his kids, it is, I want to make sure I get this stuff done, but also I want a job that's okay with me taking time off to travel, right? And so that's how he manages his time. So it's all up to you all. Now, eliminating counter stressors. The best way you can do this is have people that get along work together. Boom, done. Creating and joining a community, having a community within your organization, and then also working on your own social and emotional intelligence or helping your employees to do the same. This was really hard during COVID because in COVID, everybody went home. And when everybody went home, it was really hard to build a community at your organization, specifically because you had 60 employees that worked together. And when everybody went home, 1, you lose lots of interaction among each other. And 2, a lot of people don't use internet. Like they can't use the technology as well. So a lot of people felt super isolated the whole time. So that was very, very difficult. Where did I put my water? Oh my gosh, I left it in the bathroom like a fool. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. I'm just gonna cross my arms and huff. Anyway, how's your coffee? Pretty good.
It's good. I got a peanut butter coffee.
All right. But creating a community was really difficult during COVID. And because of that, we had an increase in encounter stressors, which is kind of funny because a lot of stuff is lost in translation online, right? And this is just kind of, I didn't plan on talking about this, but a lot of this is that way. When I started my PhD, somebody, one of the higher ups in my school who was about to graduate, she was working on a paper studying communication via emojis, right? Which is quite the art if you really think about it. Like just a plain thumbs up can mean a lot in a text conversation. You can be super rude, you can be really friendly. And her paper was looking at COVID and it started out not as COVID. It became COVID because COVID came about during her paper. She was looking at things like COVID, and you would get these increased encounter stressors because if we have a misunderstanding right now, I say something and it offends you, and you go, "Well, what do you mean by that?" I go, "Oh, I meant this. Oh, I'm sorry." And you can see my face. You can say, I'm sorry, right? And you're like, "Oh, okay, just miscommunication. No big deal." We're sending there messaging everybody, and I shoot you a message that says that, and then I go do this thing over here. You read it, you get angry, you ruminate. Rumination, 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 rumination. Maybe you don't even contact me to clear it up because it just gets lost. You're just like, he's an asshole. you just forget about it. Maybe we do get contact later, and now it's after the fact, but now we're still communicating via text. You can't see my emotions. I say, "Oh yeah, real sorry about that," and you just read that and you go, "Yeah, screw this guy." You know? And so there was actually an increase in encounter stressors, and that all makes sense. It was actually, virtual tends to bring it up, and we're not even actually physically encountering people. Yeah, look at outrage on the internet.
What? There's no outrage on the internet.
Well, there's all context is lost. Situational stressors. I'll talk about work redesign twice, so I'm mostly going to talk about it here. The best thing you can do for a rapidly changing environment is to do things like let them know it's coming ahead of time, putting in frameworks in place. I'm sure Cisco's employees are very trained and know how to deal with change at this point because it happens so much. So in a way, change is status quo. But then when we're talking about things like dangerous work environments or repetitive work environments and stuff like that, we can do what's called work redesign. So it's effectively trying to eliminate stressors and increasing productivity by changing aspects of the work to give more freedom. This can be through things like combining certain jobs. You can do something called rotation, where you move from one job to the other. You've all ever been to any sort of amusement park, and you go get on the dangerous roller coaster, and the person running the roller coaster comes by and they do the same thing every time. They walk by and they pull on everybody's seats to make sure they're locked in, and then they go sit down and they go, "Thank you for riding so and so. Please keep your arms inside the building. Have a good time." Boom, and they hit the button and you take off. If you would pay attention, after about 30 minutes, that person will get up and leave, and somebody else will come in, and that person will go to a different ride and run that job. And the reason is because this repetitiveness is actually causing in a way a lack of stress, because you become bored and people make mistakes and accidents happen, like I talked about at the beginning. So they call it work redesign or job rotation. We have to move you to give you new tasks. Lifeguards do the same thing. Lifeguards that sit there, you watch the diving board, then you go watch the kiddie pool, then you go watch the deep end or whatever, right? And we rotate them for that. Another way you'll see this is I don't know a lot about cars, so every time I give this example, I'm always like, sorry. There was a company, I think it was Ford, that it's like an assembly line, car comes by, and my job is put tires on. Make sure they're put on well, at least, right? Check tire. Boom. But what they found is when somebody does that nonstop all day, you have no ownership of your job. You start getting lackadaisical. Everything passes, right? Because most of them are fine, so you miss the errors. So what they started doing is, we're going to increase your responsibilities. We're going to redesign your job. You are now going to check the tires. You're also going to check the job of the people before you. You're also going to prep the job before. And I want you to sign this little thing every time a car comes by that says, I, Seth Smart, inspected this, this, and this, to put ownership on it. So now I have a little bit of pride in what's going out. I'm doing more tasks. My job is bigger. And it's almost given me stress in a way to reduce situational stresses. So that's like increasing decision-making authority, all sorts of stuff. And then there's the obvious redesigns of jobs, which is like, if it's, giving enough breaks to people that are working outside of stressful environments, making the job as safe as possible, having good safety equipment, all that stuff that we don't have to go over. I will say though, side note, money definitely follows risk in jobs. If you work a really risky job, you pay. I saw somebody that was working, they were a welder on basically oil rigs out in the ocean.
I'm about to bring that up.
It's crazy.
$1,000 an hour.
Yeah, they make insanity money because it's so dangerous.
Plus, it is genuinely painful.
Yeah,
Because you're under so much literal water pressure, your blood starts to like conceal.
Oh.
So you're naturally like always cold.
Yeah.
But you have to be like that because if not, you explode.
Like the number one injury as a professor is you can get back from sitting down too long.
Yeah.
It really is. I'm dead serious. Or carpal tunnel from like typing too much. I think mine's more likely to happen with video games, but
Relatable.
yeah.
Punch one too many screens.
And then last, we have anticipatory stresses. How do you eliminate those? This one's hard. Conscientiousness, it goes a long ways. Helping people know, what's coming. One way you can do this is through goal setting or, SMART goals, which I wish I was cool enough to come up with this first because my last name and I could have really stapled it. But SMART goals, having specific, measurable, attainable, timely, and why am I blanking on the R?
Reasonable.
Reasonable. It is reasonable. Wait, no, that's attainable. I don't know.
Achievable. Acronym for the same thing.
That's the same thing. I'm blanking. It doesn't matter. We're not covering it today. My brain is shot today for some reason. But it's having very specific goals that you set in the future, and typically small wins along the way. That's what we're doing with the project. So the big project is worth a ton of points for you guys. It's like 30% or whatever at the end of the year. By the time everything's said and done. So one of the things we do, or I do, to decrease your anticipatory stress about, oh my gosh, I'm going to turn this project in at the end of the year where 30% of my grade, and then you're going to be stressed, turn it in, and then what if I fail? One of the ways we do it is we set goals along the whole way, and you get small wins along the way. So the first thing you do is, now you all know what the project is, so start thinking about ideas. Okay, now here's your team. I'm going to tell you all 1 week. Contact your team, start brainstorming ideas. Then we're going to have the action plan, right? And the action plan is a small step along the way. Get the action plan to me. Small win. You score well on the action plan. Then I'll start telling you all, hey, as you complete sections, you can send them to me and I'll give you feedback. The hope is by the time we get all the way up to you turning in the business plan, you're confident that it's going to be successful. And you've done this for so long and you've turned this in and you're good. And most students that are smart take advantage and they send me their business plan the week before it's due, because I promise you that I'll read it and give you a review. And if you fix all of my comments, I can't take off any points, right? Because it's not fair to you all if I give you a bunch of points, you fix all those points, and then I say, well, I didn't say this last time, but you should have done this, right? So those students score the best. So that's anticipatory stressors. Now, intervention beyond individual level. This is the last slide before we talk about the cases a little bit. At an institutional level, we have job redesign, which I already talked about. So if you're a company and you're trying to fix stress within your company, redesigning your jobs is one. It's actually called the Hackman and Oldham model. Doing things like increasing autonomy, so your flexibility, giving you more feedback, having task variety. I should say autonomy. Most people want more autonomy in their jobs, but not all people. Some employees prefer less autonomy. They want to be told exactly what to do.
Very relatable.
Leadership practices, psychological safety, and supportive supervision. This is something that we're pushing more so now, and especially as you climb the hierarchy at your company. The reason we have such corporate language and safe HR words kind of comes from this, but it's got good intentions behind it. And that is to make employees feel comfortable that they can fail, they can come to you, that it's not going to be the end of the world, right? So if you're a good manager, you're hopefully building relationships with your employees, making them confident to come to you with their problems, right? When I told you that example last week about my wife, it was really important to her that she get to leave work to go pick up my son. She thought she had psychological safety and supportive supervision, in that a lot of employees that weren't as outspoken as my wife would have said nothing. You know what they would have done? Two things. They would have first not gone to pick up my son, sat there and been sad every single week and just not said anything to anybody. And every week it's chipping away at them and they're getting sadder and sadder, and it's getting harder and harder and worse and worse. And then two, they do it without asking. And they're just like, well, I'm just going to take the time. I'm just going to leave and make sure nobody knows or whatever, right? So if you have psychological safety, then you can prevent that. You can get ahead of it. Something comes up, I want to be able to take my son. Instead of having any stress about it, I come to my manager, we get it figured out, done. But if they don't feel comfortable to talk to you, then what you're going to get is rumination, resentment, and then problem. They're going to leave, hurt your organization, whatever. My wife did leave, so. And then flexibility and policy. Generally, flexible hours and hybrid work. I actually almost wish I would have put this on the slide. The jury's out a little bit. For the most part, flexibility tends to reduce stress when people feel like they can work on their own hours. The only problem with that is we know that when we let people have flex hours, they tend to work too much. Like if I tell you, you don't have to work 9 to 5, you just have to get this job done, people will work actually more, right? Like that's my job. Nobody cares if I'm in the office. Nobody cares if I'm not in the office, whatever. As long as I'm here to teach you all, get your stuff done. But that means some weeks I worked way too much. Some weeks I don't work as much, like whatever. And then the hybrid model of working at home and working in person is the one that the jury's really out on. Everybody wants to know the answer to this one, if like working from home is good or allowing employees to work from home is good. It seems that it depends on the industry. Some industries it's really successful, some industries we're not so sure. As far as like stress levels, it seems it's generally better if the company does hybrid well, stress seems to be lower. hybrid can be done in a bad way, right? But then it gets really interesting. There was a study by Dr. Wang at Northwestern in Chicago, and she's a mom. And during COVID and everything, she had to work from home a lot, and she had friends that wanted to work from home as parents. And she thought a lot of moms have a problem going to work because they don't get to see their kids, so they feel like bad mothers, right? And if they get to work from home and be in this environment, they're going to feel like good mothers because their kids are right there. And her study actually found that moms that are at home can't ever fully switch out of job mode or out of mom mode, and the two crossed, and the moms actually felt worse because they felt that they were with their kids and their kids could see them, but they couldn't be present with their kids. And the moms that were working from home with kids at home actually felt like worse mothers than the moms that went to the job, because you could separate, leave the job, work mom, come home, mom. But now we had this blend between the two. So the hybrid thing is kind of interesting, because then you have people like my wife who feels like a better mom being able to be at home, and she loves it. But that may just depend on the job. Since she's the manager, she's a little bit more loose. She can be more present. And most of my kids are older, so they're gone. And the last one on here, it's the last thing I say before we do the case study, is reasonable accommodations. If you've ever taken an HR class, you should do this. Reduce stress. Reasonable accommodations are providing accommodations for people, like leaving 30 minutes early to pick your kids up from school, that are going to reduce stress, but they're not going to cost the organization a lot. There's no hard and fast rule. When I used to teach HR, they would tell companies that around $600 should be like, like spending $600 on a reasonable accommodation should be okay.
Like a year or like a month?
Like for whatever the accommodation is. So like the big one was, this all started originally because Walmart wouldn't let its cashier sit down. And then you have a cashier that's like, I have a back problem, but I want to work. And Walmart actually used to be really against that. And now with reasonable accommodation laws, it's like, no, that's a reasonable accommodation. They can do the job with a very small change. So you're discriminating if you don't do it. As long as you doing it isn't going to cost or harm anything, really. It's considered a reasonable accommodation. Organizations do their best to do reasonable accommodations. I do my best with students. I get way better evals and have a way better relationship with students for simple, what I think are no-brainer reasonable accommodations versus the strict, we have to be this way no matter what with every single person always. I mean, I'll have students email me and be like, I've been traveling for 1 week for work. Here's my documents of work. I fly in and land in Oklahoma at 10 p.m. I'll be at my house at 11. Is it okay if I don't turn this in by midnight? Can I turn it in by 1 a.m.? I've got emails like exactly like that before. And I think we can all agree a pretty reasonable accommodation is, I'm going to be asleep. I don't care. Like, go for it. But I've had professors that would say, hell no. So, well, there's a balance. I get it. You got to have a standard.
Yeah.
You got to have a standard. I get it. And
well, they don't understand what a reasonable accommodation is, apparently.
Yeah, but the only thing is with reasonable accommodations, and I want to say this so nobody gets in trouble, you have to be super consistent. You can't, if I give it to one, and I make a mental note, I write it down so nobody will ever be able to catch me on this. If a student emails me beforehand and says, I have X event, can I get a 24-hour extension? I said yes, and anybody that asks for a 24-hour extension gets that 24-hour extension, if they ask. But my rule has always been, it has to be a real reason, right? You can't just say, I forgot, is this okay? I unfortunately will email back and be like, I have a pretty good late penalty, so just take your late penalty. It's not that big of a deal. It's 10% or whatever. I think it's 10%. And I take that off and you're fine. But you have to be consistent, because otherwise there's a lawsuit going on right now with 2 different universities of a professor giving a student grace on assignment but not giving it on someone else, and they were sued for discrimination. So we were told at the beginning of the year to be consistent, but if you ever think I'm not being, let me know. Nobody's ever accused me of that. So cool. We're gonna talk about Call of the Wild. We are going to talk a little bit about a case study here. Everybody surviving? Doing good? Barely? With your peanut butter coffee?
Yeah.
Good.
It's great.
All right, here. I have to say something. If you're not listening to anything in this class, listen to what I'm saying right now. There's a case study on here, right here, the Goldman Sachs case study. You don't have to do it. This is not due. Got it?
Why is it there?
Because we're going to talk about it.
Can't do it anyway.
Anytime, yeah, I don't care. But at any time I put something on Blackboard, students will ask me if it's due, and that's fine, because you should get good grades. But I'm just letting you know, you don't have to do this. We're just going to talk about it. But before we do, I'm going to tell you another case study. So when I started my PhD, it was in 2017. I'm actually going to stop sharing, and I'll pull that back up in a second. When I started my PhD, it was in 2017, and in 2016, Wells Fargo did something pretty cool. Let me tell you. I gotta be honest, having that right there is gonna be distracting while I walk around. That's better. Wells Fargo did something pretty cool. So, Wells Fargo, high stress work environment, known for that. Okay? A lot of organizations, and particularly industries, are okay with a high stress work environment. It's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's not like damaging. But this is what happened, and I've used this story to tell a lot of stories. Wells Fargo wanted to increase their sales. So the people at the top told the people underneath them, we want to increase sales. And the people underneath them said, okay. And they went to their managers, their frontline managers, and were like, increase sales. And the frontline managers went to their employees and said, we are going to raise your quota. You have to sell more per month, right? Boom, new standard, get it. And Wells Fargo employees worked their ass off, worked really, really hard, met the quota. Now, as a frontline manager, with the hope of climbing the corporate ladder, the only thing I want to report to people above me is that my team met expectations. So I pushed my guys and my gals, but it was mostly men working at Wells Fargo at the time, to reach their sales quotas. And they reached it, and I reported up, we made it. And they reported up, we made it, and the C-suite guys said, awesome, raise them. Because if everybody met their quotas, we need to go higher. Well, the first time it happened, it's because all the managers were basically pushing their people to the limit. But they didn't report that up. Because as a manager who wants to move up, I want to be a yes man. I don't want to say, we met it, but it was hard. I want to say, we got it, boss. No problem. So that came back down. First line managers had to say, we're going to raise them again. And now I have to be super hard on my employees. But as a frontline manager, I am not reporting up that it's been stressful or difficult for my employees. I just want to say, we're meeting our sales goals. No problem, boss. And it's going up. So what kept happening was a disconnect between C-suite and our frontline managers, the people actually selling, right? And they thought, we keep reaching our sales goals. They must not be high enough, or we can go higher. And these people down here were basically dying from it. If you ever read it was a huge scandal for Wells Fargo, and I'll tell you why here in a second.
Which one?
Yeah, I know. And there were people reporting throwing up, like they talk about working in these like cubicles, and people were like throwing up in wastebaskets like beside you all the time for stress, and people were like constantly crying, and it was like people sleeping on their desk, like it was a horrible deal going on. But there was a disconnect between the two. Super high stressful work environment, boom, 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 going on. Well, Wells Fargo's hard to get a job at. You are a college student that got an MBA or an undergrad at a big business school, and you got a job at Wells Fargo, and they're paying you $180,000 a year, which is crazy. You're 24 years old, you've been poor your whole life, you're making crazy money, but you got to work your ass off to do this. So you have to make sure you reach these sales goals, because everybody around you is reaching those sales goals. So I don't care how stressful it is, you have to reach them. Well, once you get pushed so far at stress, a lot of things happen. You can leave your job, right? But these people have worked really hard at this job. They're making great money. They're not going to do that. And they're mostly young and resilient. So they were like, keep going. So they engaged in counterproductive work behaviors, and they created what's called a ghost account. You know what a ghost account is? It's a fake account. I have to make my sale. John Doe bought $10,000 from me today. Fake account, fake sale. Frontline managers are not investigating these because they just want to reach the sales goals. So you got your sale, awesome. That's all I want to report is that we got our sales. Sales goals get raised. People continue to make ghost accounts. It got terrible to the point that when people came in, and this is my very first paper I wrote in my PhD, was called norm conforming CWB, which is you are doing bad behaviors because everybody else does, and it's what you're supposed to do. People would come to the company. I would say, here's your sales goals. And you would say, this is nuts. There's no way I can reach this. And I'd be like, yeah, no one actually does. You just get as much sales as you can, and then I'll show you how to get the rest. So everybody started doing it. They ended up reporting hundreds of millions of dollars of fake revenue because so many people were doing it. And the C-suite and the upper managers claim they had none the wiser, no idea this was happening. We actually, as researchers, have a pretty good reason to believe they really did it because there's no way to fake this in the long run. Like when the roosters come home, you're just going to get caught. Like you just can't have that much fake revenue. But then again, Enron thought they could get away with it, so maybe not. But all of this came back. They figured it out eventually because
Money wasn't there.
money wasn't there, that they're claiming money's there. It ended up being, it's been used as a case study for multiple things. Primarily, it's been used for stress, right? They're talking about this really high stress environment that pushes employees to engage in these bad behaviors. I can tell you, I don't think anything happened to those employees besides getting fired, right? Because the idea was they were pushed too far. It also has been used as a case study to explain that communication breaks down between the top and bottom, right? You should also consider the stress level of each manager. They've basically not been giving any sort of psychological safety. You just have to reach your goals, and I'm not going to investigate how you do them, right? Just get them done. So now you have an incentive to just get it done. So that came about. And then you have my paper on norm conforming CWB, which was that. If everybody does it, you'll be like, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? So you just do it. It's the norm. So that's what happened at Wells Fargo. They ended up paying a ton of money in fines. If you ever want to look it up, you can look up the 2018 ad where they basically say Wells Fargo, established in like 1880 or something. They're super old. Established in 1880, reestablished in 2018. That was like their whole slogan for a long time. And in that ad, it's kind of funny because they just like admit how wrong they were. They just come out and they're like, we've been helping people for over 100 years, but somewhere along the way, we lost our way. And then they go through in detail in the ad all the things they're going to do to fix the company. They're like, we're going to get rid of aggressive sales goals for employees. We're going to have better auditing of managers' reports and all this stuff, right, to make people feel better about it. What's kind of scary is like all that happened. Wells Fargo just keeps on keeping on, right? They're still out there.
And still have aggressive sales goals anyway.
I don't know. You know, it's hard to get good data on people that have got these scandals. They don't want you in there. What? Yeah, I know. Or they're super transparent when they do make changes. Usually what I see is they're really transparent for a while and they're not.
And then a new CEO comes in, and then no more transparency.
But that's what happened at Wells Fargo, and that's a fun stress case study about what can happen if you let employees get too stressed. This I put together really briefly before class because we're going to talk about it real quick here, and I'll let you all read. It's on Blackboard if you all want to see it yourself. This is a true story. It's from Forbes originally, so you can pull up Forbes and know that I'm not making up these numbers, but it is kind of funny. It's happened in 2021, but if you don't read the news all the time, you may have missed it. Goldman Sachs, which is an investment bank, and a Goliath. They do a lot, and they make a lot of money doing it. In February 2021, 13 of their first-year analysts at Goldman in the US specifically decided they were going to conduct an internal, informal survey among themselves. So what they're going to do, I'm going to send a survey around the company, kind of like what you took, right? But it's going to be internal. I'm going to survey people in the company. I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to get some data because things don't feel right around here. And they surveyed them. They prepared a slide deck of their findings and they presented it to the manager. And then someone leaked the survey on social media. To my knowledge, we don't know who yet. I'm guessing Goldman wants to know or found out and got rid of them and didn't say anything. But so they basically said, hey, we found some crazy results. I think you should hear about these because they look bad. And then somebody in that meeting went, I'm going to share these results and send it out to social media. And this is what they said. They had a question about working hours. They found that the average employee was reporting 105 hours worked per week. average was 98, pardon me. Excuse me. The highest volume of the week was 105 hours. Still, 98 is insanity in a traditional 40-hour work week, right? I think American average is between 42 and 45.
Or 16 hours over just 5 days. Well, if you do the average 5,
Yeah.
that's what, 17 hours?
Yeah. Average person said they were reporting 5 hours of sleep per night. There's a quote that I don't think put in here where somebody on the survey wrote, when I took the job, I knew it would be more than a 9 to 5, but on average, I'm working 9 to 5 a.m. So they were like working and then going to sleep. There were people on the survey talking about most days working late into the night and then just having to sleep nearby or go to get a hotel or whatever. And that's just what they had to do during the week to get their job done. Mental and physical health was reported to have sharply declined by pretty much all employees that took the survey. 100% said that their work hours were negatively impacting their relationship with friends and family because, again, 98 hours average. No one's working 40 hours in that, right? They're all working 80 hours a week. I don't know if anybody here has ever put an 80-hour work in weekend. I've only done it at the peak of my PhD when it was terrible for me, and it is a terrible way to live. It is horrible. It's bad for everybody. So 100% said their work hours were negatively impacting the relationship with friends and family. Many, 77%, said they felt they'd been victims of workplace abuse, high frequency of unrealistic deadlines, ignored in meetings, unwanted public criticism, micromanaged, and occasional verbal abuse. On a scale of 1 to 10, their satisfaction with the firm and work life were very low, around a 2, and personal life around a 1. Personal life being a 1 is actually impressive. Most people won't rate lowest or highest on things if they're educated. If you're an educated, conscientious person, you tend to not choose the extremes on each end because you're like, it could always be worse. So saying a 1 is impressive, actually. Their likelihood of staying at Goldman Sachs if conditions don't change was also low, 3.5 out of 10 chance of being there after 6 months under those conditions. That's all great news that you want to know at Goldman Sachs internally. Once that was leaked, the world was very angry at Goldman Sachs, which I know is why they leaked it. I don't know, but I'm assuming. What's up? Well, let's talk about that. Goldman's response. I mean, besides people being like, don't do that, right? Although I don't know if there was any major litigation over this because we're borderlining on like, we have it, like federal HR policies also. But I don't know if that would.
You have to then take them to court, and that would be hard to win.
It's getting weirdly inhumane. So, and most of those agencies prefer to deal with things like discrimination. Goldman Sachs acknowledged the concerns, obviously, because you can't not after this. It's been interesting. People have wondered if, the internet immediately said, well, would you acknowledge that if the world would have known, right? Because Goldman Sachs, like Wells Fargo, has the advantage of we're paying you a ton of money. And if you leave, this young person's going to come take your job. So go, right? Because somebody wants to make your money. But of course, once it became global in part, national news, it was kind of an issue. They said business volume was historic at the time. Work was high. People were stretched, especially that year into COVID. So they argued originally it was because of the events going on right now is why it's so high. To most people, myself as a researcher, I'm like, that's probably not true. Well, I'm sure it was true, but you don't double people's work because of something like that. That's insanity. They said that they would hire more junior analysts and staff to ease the burden of everybody else. I'm going to hire more people, is what they're saying. We're going to strengthen the enforcement of the Saturday rule, a policy where junior staff should not be expected to work from 9 p.m. Friday to 9 a.m. Sunday, or at least making sure that rule is respected more strictly, which is such an undermined thing to say. We're going to do our best to make sure that is respected more strictly, not enforced, no matter what. They also said that they would listen to feedback, recognizing the stress and moral concerns, and the CEO, David Solomon, made a message to staff saying, senior management is taking this seriously. That's all I know that came about from it. They technically don't have to publicly display or say anything else. That's the public statement that we know, unless they were sued. Okay, because they don't have to share anything. Like, they don't have to say what they're doing internally. Necessarily. If they're publicly traded, it gets a little bit weirder. I'm not sure how Goldman Sachs works with all that. But that is our modern Wells Fargo that has not had major fallout to my knowledge. I don't know this case nearly as intimately as the Wells Fargo case. I know that case really well. There could be more fallout from this, but we have been on a bit of like watch on this company to be like, is something going to come from this eventually? If they are working employees this much, there could be something else that ends up happening. And I'm sure Goldman Sachs has tons of problems with counterproductive work behaviors. What's up?
Did you hear that one of the biggest banking firms just went out of bankrupt a couple years ago in Europe?
Really?
Yeah. I want to say like Cell Love Soto or something. I can find it for you, but
Interesting.
they're like 200 years old and they just went poof.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Enron was pretty powerful for a long time. But all of you that have been listening or semi-listening, we are now going to do your lecture question. Okay? We're going to talk about Goldman Sachs here. I just went over the case. Instead of making you read it, I just talked about it all the way through. It's brief anyway. It's mostly numbers. Keep in mind, Goldman Sachs is a large company. They have really high expectations, quite honestly. But they're obviously overworking their employees and having lots of stress. I don't mean to step on what Goldman did. If you all agree with what they did, that's great. It's not going to hurt my feelings at all. I feel like I think they did exactly what they should have done, and that's my belief. Great. You get 10 out of 10 points for being here. I'm not judging your answer. I want to know, just based on this, if you think Goldman should have done more and what they should do, and if you were in your limited information within this company, what would you do to ease stress while still maintaining productivity? Or at least a high enough productivity. This is all just your opinion. I'm not going to judge these super hard. I'm just curious about what people think. If you had more information, and I'm just talking, you guys can start writing. If you had more information on this case, I'm sure it would be harder to answer. We can all agree these things are kind of wild and crazy. But just break it down. What could they do to make this better?
Were they paying those people overtime for the extra hours they were working, or were they salary employees?
To my limited knowledge, they were salary. But I can double check that for you.
I got a small.
That would probably affect my. Not that it's that big of a deal.
Now, let me pull the Forbes article up I had. Double check. Actually, I think it's on my phone. That may be faster. Hold on. I'm going to learn more about this case, though, because it just became an interest of mine the last couple of days. According to Forbes, the analysts in the investment banking scandal were entry-level, fresh out of college, and are in salary roles. They did not receive overtime pay like hourly employees would under U.S. wage laws. There you go. I figured so. The high number of hours is part of the culture and job demands rather than something that they would typically separately compensate. So it's just kind of expected in the role. Which, I've made all these arguments against Goldman Sachs, and now I'll be the jerk professor while you guys write this, the guy that has like maybe too harsh of views, and make the argument that Goldman Sachs is probably pretty upfront about this. They're pretty high intensity competitive environment, and they were probably being paid very well with real promises that their future could be really good in the company, right? You come in, you're kind of just like, forgive the term, like a work slave coming in. And a lot of these people, especially if you come from a really big business college, you kind of expect it a little bit. It's almost like hazing. you kind of expect to just get destroyed in this almost like internship level job. But it's because you see all these people that you're working with that are early 30s making $500,000 to $1 million a year. And they'll tell you, you just got 5-10 years, man. Just tough it out, right? And for a lot of people, that's okay. So I will give them their flowers on that, and maybe that'll help you all with the decision. I won't be shocked if I have students tell me it's expected in this type of environment, and the stress is part of it, and that's why these people make that much money, right? And that's just part of it. Just like the guy that's got to go underwater and weld or whatever. But then other people, I'm sure a lot of you will be like, no one should have to do this. I'm going to give you just a couple more minutes to answer. Then I'm going to talk briefly, and then we're going to skedaddle. Because we don't have any, this week we're not doing any case study that you all need to set and do in class and we need to go over.
Credit CITA, Susie.
Say that again?
Credit SUI, this one.
Oh yeah, it's not a very English name.
Yeah, they were founded in the 1800s. And they failed a couple years ago.
It's remarkable.
Yep.
They tried to scare me when I became a professor by showing me all these old colleges that closed.
Yep. Weirdly enough, their head CEO was one of the same ladies that was part of the reason for the 2008 financial crisis. She was part of that major banking firm that fell in Wall Street that week.
Okay.
If that's their name too.
I'm going to wait just like one more minute, and then I'm going to just wrap things up, and we're going to get out of here. We are on the week of 9/15, right? No case study. We do a case study next week. That's what I thought. All right. Good. Oh, sorry. For everybody online, I probably should have shared my screen when I was talking about Goldman Sachs, but I mostly just said it all out loud, so. And the paper's on Blackboard. All right. Real quick, and I'm going to let you all out of here. For this week, hopefully you all have seen this by now, but oh my gosh, way too many things. We have managing stress under here. Our slides, I'm going to put the lecture video there. And for assignments this week, obviously do your chapter 2 reading, the lecture 4 question, which you all have done hopefully by now. It's due this Sunday. Homework chapter 2 is just like the last homework. You got your 10 questions. Unless you're in my MBA, you have additional questions. And then assessment 3. Oh, also for my MBA, there's an extra video in here for you all. So you have 2 videos this week. The assessment is on time management. Now, for those of you that don't have your textbook, I have great news for you. There's a document that actually has this assessment in it. If I recall correctly, it's because if I can find the assessment for free through publicly available journals, I don't feel bad about putting it online, right? So I believe a version of this is also in your textbook, but this is the one we're going to do. All you have to do for this assessment is download this file, fill it out. Wow, hey, that's scrolled. Fill it all the way out. I've highlighted all the areas that you need to fill in. And then you calculate your score down here like always. And then you just turn this whole document in. Very simple this week, doing your assessment and your homework. There's no case study this week. There's a case study next week. Cool? Cool. I think that's pretty easy. I will post your teams, hopefully in the day or so. I'm going to make an announcement when I post them, and I will post them in the final project folder, and it'll just be down here. It's just going to be an Excel document that'll say team 1 and have everybody's name in it. Team 2 and have everybody's name in it. That'll be it. Once I post the teams, and I'll say this in the announcement, please reach out to your team members. The sooner the better. But once you have your team, you can just start. I mean, you can technically do the whole project right now. But you can just start, and we'll be good. Anybody have any questions for me? Awesome. I don't have anything else for you. You guys are great. I will talk to you all later. I'm going to turn off my recorder here.